is she here? I don't know how to start this. This is so weird. Hello everyone, welcome to the very first episode of MUsiKBANG, where we have music conversations over food. And today we have here Jonah, who is also a classical pianist, a very good pianist. Yeah. Okay, so we have our food in front of us already. Or maybe you want to tell them what we're having.
So for us, we got food from the market nearby at Toa Payoh Lorong 1. We got economic bihun.
Yeah.
So I got like beef and mian chan together with like some Taiwan sausage, luncheon meat, eggs, chicken wing, the usual things. Then we also got drinks. She has teh, siew dai, I've got kopi si kosong.
And then for me, I got things like xiang ngoh hiang. Do you have ngoh hiang? Oh, you don't have ngoh hiang today. Fried egg is a must with like, you know, your brown beehoon. Fried chicken as usual. Yeah, and I like this thing. I like the fish basting. Like the fried fish fillet kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, well I see Jonah started eating. Yeah, I'm also very hungry. Okay, so today what are we talking about actually? We are basically talking about what is it like to take on like the unconventional path of being a freelance musician in Singapore. I'm currently a full-time freelance musician, but for Jonah, he is also a freelance musician, but he's still studying as well. Yeah, okay. So maybe you can first briefly introduce yourself, like a little bit about your musical background and how you got to where you are in your career now.
Yeah. I'm currently a third year student at the Conservatory of Music, and as you heard from her just now, I major in classical piano. It's not something I thought that I would become actually since young. But I studied piano from around the age of 3 or 4, went on, did my usual grades, diploma. Then I entered music elective program in secondary school, and I think that sparked a bit of interest to continue pursuing music a bit further. So when I was Sec 2, I decided that I needed a new teacher to kind of bring me to the next stage of my music life, I guess. Yeah. And so I decided to set out and find a new teacher, and we got this contact for this teacher in Conservatory of Music. I ended up becoming a student, a young artist in the conservatory, which is basically an early degree program for those who are currently still studying at other schools.
Like so if you're still in like JC, secondary school, or like even poly, right? Yeah, like before the age of usual like Singaporean going uni students.
So I was able to clear modules in uni while I was still doing my secondary school and JC education, and basically get MCs for it, modular credits MCs.
Yeah.
And right after NS, I came straight back into Sem 2 of the conservatory, and yeah, after that, lots of performances, studying, practice, lots of practice later.
And you're still doing it now, like?
Yeah.
Basically, like you're busy every day because of rehearsals and practice.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, and
台上1分钟，台下10年功.
Yeah, so that translates to 10 minutes on stage, but 台下10年功, sorry, my brain glitched.
10年.
So 10 minutes on stage means that you need 10 years of training and of hard work, right, to get to the stage where you can be on stage for 10 minutes, right? So it's a lot of hard work. And also I heard that you were in the orchestra. Okay, not I heard lah, okay, I knew, okay? And we met in JC, that's why I know he was in orchestra. He was also in orchestra at the beginning of JC, right? Yeah, so maybe you can tell us a little bit more about like how maybe that has also helped you in your musical journey.
Yeah, so I joined the ACSI School of String Orchestra when I was Sec 1 under the MAP scheme as well. You know, when you're in MAP, you have to join a music CCA. So under the scholarship, I went to study the cello, and so cello is actually my second instrument. Don't ask about my cello now; it's terrible. I haven't touched it in quite long. But I think orchestra had a lot of useful experiences. just from being an orchestral musician, it puts a lot of things that you play in piano music into perspective. Whenever we play things on the piano, instead of hearing just the piano, we're actually thinking of all the orchestral forces. Basically, it's an orchestra,
like a solo, like a one-man orchestra, right?
basically, because you're doing the role of all the different instruments and only with your 10 fingers. And so understanding orchestral forces is like really instrumental.
Oh, like a musical
literally
jargon
instrumental.
adjective.
to playing the piano and understanding it.
Yeah, for me, I actually didn't study MEP until JC. So until I went into IB at ACSI, yeah, I mean that's how we met lah, and we were music classmates back in ACSI. So for me, actually, I just did normal external piano classes that I think a lot of you would be familiar with. Like I think because in Singapore, a lot of us go through piano classes when we were young, right? And for me, like I've always known that I kind of wanted to pursue something music related, but like through the years, I always thought that it was something that it was just like a fantasy, because I never knew, right, what a music career entailed beyond being a music teacher, like what my teacher was teaching me. But actually that is my main job now lah. But anyway, I didn't know anything beyond that, and other areas of like music career that I knew of would be like pop musicians, pop singers, because so that was all the exposure I had, because my family, they don't know music. So I went into secondary school and I actually wanted to apply for MEP, which is the music elective program, which Jonah did in his secondary school years. I didn't because I didn't hit the minimum grade, okay, in terms of my piano when I was Sec 1, so I didn't. And then in Sec 3, actually we had the option of taking O-level music, but I just didn't because I wasn't doing very well in school already. So I thought like, okay, I better focus and not give myself unnecessary pressure. And then end up not doing well at all for the other subjects as well. So I didn't take, but honestly I kind of regretted it, because after that I just in JC I was like a bit FOMO lah, because like all my classmates did MEP except for me. So I was very new to the whole thing, right? But I think for us, we were very, very privileged to have very good music teachers, correct, in ACSI. Yeah, so we actually spent a lot of time, the teachers spent a lot of time helping me, coaching me. Actually, I even sat in some of the secondary school classes. Like I actually sat in like the Sec 2 MEP class, and at that point in time, it was a little bit awkward because the Sec 2 boys were asking like, the teacher, madam, why is she here? Isn't she in year 5? Why is she in our class? And then my teacher would just say, come for lesson lah. But I think that was really helpful. And I think it was in IB, right? Because I decided to take the leap of faith and pursue music at higher level. As a higher level subject. I think that was exactly the turning point for me when I thought, okay, I want to do something music related. Yeah, I think then that brings us to the next question, like when exactly or was there something, right, that was like a very obvious turning point for you, which led you to decide that, hey, you really want to pursue music? I think for me it was like when I was in IB, like I said, but initially I was also very scared. But then after that, my mom suggested, why don't you try applying to LaSalle after IB? And at that point in time, I was like so scared of my musical abilities, right? And I remember like I told you about it, but I took so long and it took a lot of courage for me to tell you about it also. But then when I told him, then he said like, oh, that's a very good idea. Do you remember that? Yeah, you remember the conversation, right? Yeah, and then the rest is history lah. So yeah, that was for me. How about you? Was there like any specific turning point or any specific incident or something that led you to want to become a musician?
Well, I guess as I shared earlier, the meeting my private teacher at YST definitely molded me into becoming a musician today, because it's a very different way of studying music as I knew it was a completely different approach. It was so much more. I wouldn't want to use the word serious. I mean, I guess music lessons outside are serious as well, very serious.
Intense.
But yeah, yes, intense is the word, where you really delve deep into the music. And very honestly, I was lost.
Yeah, same.
I was lost for a good 2 to 3 years.
But until now, I still feel lost at hello. Sometimes I still do.
Yeah, but I think one thing I find about myself is that I really love performing on stage.
Yeah, so he is like more of a performer kind of guy.
Yeah, I love the feeling of performing. The feeling of practicing before the performance is very tedious. It's very, very tedious. The nerves don't ever go away also. In case you're wondering whether you see people play on stage, whether they're scared or not. And you know how people say, "Oh, I play so many times, confirm not scared already." It gets worse and worse.
Actually, it gets worse. Oh, actually, sidetrack a bit, right? Can I just ask, like, how long do you usually take to settle in? You know, when you're performing on stage already, how long do you usually maybe take to kind of feel more at ease and like more settled on stage? Or is it immediately when you step up, the adrenaline, just hits you and then you're okay?
Okay, it really depends on what sort of piece it is. If it's a piece with a really, really like strong opening, like like Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto, that kind you can just blow your nerves away. If you ask me to start with a piece like Beethoven Piano Concerto No. 4 in G major, or like
that's very slow and quiet,
or like my Schubert G major sonata. Oh my gosh, those are terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The quietest things at the piano are the most terrifying to play.
Yeah.
Not the loudest things.
Actually, the slower it is, the quieter it is. It's harder because it exposes you.
Yeah, and you have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Your ideas, your control of the sound in that split moment is really, really, really there. Like, there's nothing to hide.
I think for me, right, I take very long. And I think maybe like I'm a bit of the opposite of him. While I do find quiet, slow pieces very scary to play, but I personally prefer starting with like a slower pace piece. Just cause for me, right, I'm always so anxious and so nervous that my heart is pounding like crazy. I'm literally panting backstage, and my stomach hurts so badly. A lot of times, like, I feel like I'm gonna throw up anytime. So I feel like starting slow helps me a little bit more in the sense that because I already know that, I think most of the time, like, I don't even have a good control of myself, of my body already. So I feel like starting slow helps me in that manner, helps me to ease in, right? Like, more easily and, like, slowly gain a bit more control over, like, my, like, weird body shaking. Like, I literally shake a lot. Sometimes I shake so much that I feel that I cannot really control my legs when I pedal as well, and it has happened before. Like, my knees just felt so locked. So to pedal, right, and controlling pedal is not just about going up or down lah. Like, there are a lot of other things to think about as well. I just had, I had the experience before, like, it was terrifying because I thought, oh my gosh, like, my pedal sounds bad, and I was just not able to control it because my knees were really so locked. Yeah.
But it's very normal.
Yeah, I think like everyone has their fair, so don't get too intimidated, okay? Everyone has their fair share of like, not so pleasant experiences on stage. But I think that's the only way to grow, to be very honest. And a lot of teachers have also told me before, the only way to let yourself grow and become a better musician is to really throw yourself out there, allow yourself to make mistakes, right? Allow yourself to have those like not so pleasant experiences.
Yeah, you said you were shaking, right? At the start of my drums, I was shaking as well. I don't think you could tell. Could you tell?
No. Well, anyway, if you're wondering what is this Brahms thing that Jonah's talking about, it was his performance of Brahms Piano Concerto. Number one, I'll leave a link in the description and go and check it out. It's really good.
But at the end of the day, being a performer is also like how well can you act on stage. Actually, it's basically an acting.
It's a performance, right? Like, you're supposed to engage.
You have to get into the character, and acting also in the sense that even if you're scared, you can't show it. So it's like even if you're going out there and you're shaking, right? At the start of Brahms, my hands are literally like.
Oh, mine too. At the backstage, I'm always like shaking so badly, and I get so cold. Yeah. Okay, shall we go back to the question? So for you, technically, when you decided to become a musician, like professionally, yeah, okay, I guess we deviated too much. Okay, but anyway, so the question was, so what was the turning point for you, right? So it was when you met your teacher. But what about your time with the teacher and whatever you learned with the teacher caused you to make that decision, or did your teacher say something that knocked some sense into your head?
My teacher said a lot of things and not a lot of sense into my head.
And it took a long time, right?
I was probably one of the epitomes of top in Sec 2. My secondary school days. There came a point when I had to decide, both in my JC and this music, what I really want. And I found that, music for me, there's just something about it that I connect so deeply with, because it reflects life, doesn't it? Like it contains basically the whole breadth of life.
Yeah, music is human essentially, right?
It is human. Try and just imagine life without music. Can you imagine? It's not possible. Wherever you go, you have some form of music.
Like the birds sing.
I guess Singapore bird song, you always think ooh bird.
That's
silly ooh bird.
Ooh! That's what I get. Ooh! Can you do it?
I think what music does is, instead of chasing something so far off, right, and all these ambitions and all.
Puts things into perspective for you, is it?
And actually, all these things are already right in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Instead of chasing stuff so far away, joy is already right in front of us.
Yeah, I think to pursue the arts, it really requires a lot of passion, because as we all know already, in Singapore it's a very unconventional route. But of course, I think anyone can take up, but you really need to have the passion for it, because it's not going to be easy. It's manageable for sure, right? Anything is pretty much manageable, but you need to have the drive for it, right? In order to feel like it's a sustainable career that you can sustain for a very long time, right? Yeah, so thank you for that very deep perspective. To be honest, I never heard that from him before, actually.
Really?
I have but you never told me in depth, Yeah, now I know. Okay, so anyway, then that brings us to the next point. How did your family and friends support you? Because we all know that in Singapore, I think even until today, the arts it still seems like a distant concept in terms of pursuing it as a career, right? So how did your family react, and how did they respond
Well,
to your decision?
my family was extremely supportive. I'm very, very blessed. I can't say how thankful I am to my family for being this supportive, and also to friends and especially music teachers, actually. Especially in ACS, Actually,
shout out to our MVP teacher. Sorry, got food in my mouth.
And for my family, they've always told me that worrying about finances and all are important, but there will always be ways to earn your money, to create your own opportunities for yourself, and that's very important, to create your own opportunities. But what's more important is to find something that you really love doing. Then your job in that way, right, won't feel
so much like work.
Because then you'll find so much more drive to invest your effort and all into it.
Yeah.
It's not to say that it'll be easy. You ask me, is music easy? No, it's not. Not at all, no.
But it's manageable again, so don't be intimidated.
Yes.
Okay, if you really have the passion for it, I would say go for it.
Yes. But it's as with anything in life, go and be sure
of what you want to pursue.
What is your joy? What's your motivation? I think as long as you can start to find that, right, you can start to make decisions in your life that motivate yourself as well, that tap on your strengths, that tap on this interest that you have.
But I think so for you, a lot of the support, seems like the people around you were very supportive of this decision, and in fact they were people who kind of encourage and spur you on.
Definitely. And
right? To find the right, so-called right mentality and perspective as to why you should be pursuing music as well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so I think you're very blessed in that area, and it's very nice to hear of that. For me actually, I'm also blessed, quite blessed, that my family was very supportive. But to be honest, that support, I mean, they've always been like, supportive and respectful of my decision from the beginning, right? But they had their doubts at the start. Even though my mom was the one who suggested that maybe I should apply to LaSalle, she and a few other family members, they were quite concerned, they would say things like, are you sure you really want to do music first? And then they said, it's not wrong to do it, and they would support me, but they say maybe you might want to consider perhaps, wait we need to plug in the charger Oh yes, it's charging, right? You zoomed in though. So my mom and a few other family members were quite worried, and they said things like, do you want to consider pursuing a degree first? Also, they were saying like, why don't you pursue one of these first? And after you get those degrees, that degree, then you go and do your music degree. And to me, I just felt like I spent the past 2 years in JC trying so hard to work on my craft, right? With a new teacher, and I have made significant improvements, albeit like, there was still a long way to go. But I just felt like, if I were to pursue a different degree for the next 4 years, I would then lose my craft, right? Because, at the point in time, I just thought like, I might have to devote so much time to my degree right? And then, how do I pursue music? And it's not like I even have a music subject in school or whatever already. So in the end, I decided no, I'm just gonna do music, and they were okay with it. They had their doubts, right? And they had concerns, but they were never like, no, you cannot, no, you must listen to us and do it this way, right? Like they knew it was an unconventional path, and they knew that there were risks that I was taking, but I think at the end of the day, they came to terms with it, and when they realized that, hey, I could actually make a living out of it, right? And that I was getting better at what I did, then they started to be more assured about it. And actually, until now, right, the tables, not tables, but like the situation has kind of changed a little bit for the better, because now they actually tell me, to look out for various opportunities that I could possibly take up as a musician, So I think that is something that is very heartening to me, because I think, at the end of the day, you really can make it work. And actually, to be honest, in Singapore, there are a lot of opportunities that I guess most people still don't see especially like maybe my parents' generation. Yeah, my parents are actually older than Singapore. Sorry, mom and dad. So I can understand where they're coming from, right? And where my relatives' concerns are from as well, because they came from a time, right, when they were born pre-independence. So I can understand, where they're coming from, in that life was so hard for them. And actually, my mom and dad, they grew up quite poor. So, for them, like, they always thought that you should just do something that is sustainable. Like for them, they put their priority as, their priority is to do something that helps them to be able to feed the family, first and foremost. And whether they like it or not, it doesn't really matter as much, because for them, really, they just want to provide for themselves and their family Yeah, but I think, so when you can show them that it works, like you can definitely provide for yourself and for your future family, and that it's possible to also enjoy what you're doing at the same time, even though it's a very unconventional route, at least here in Singapore, right? So that brings us to the next point now. Okay, so money matters. I think like a lot of people are probably curious, I hope, about like, is it really sustainable? How much do freelance musicians earn? We will not be telling you exact figures but we could probably give you a range of the various sums of money, I guess, that you could earn in like various different projects and things that you do in music in Singapore. There are quite a number of different things that you can do, but do note that these rates, right, are different for everybody also because at the end of the day, right, rates are, I guess, personal to some extent, because people would, it depends on how much you think like your craft and your work and your time is worth lah. But there is like a range depending on depending on various reasons and circumstances. So maybe Jonah, you can share first. Apart from studying, right? As we all know, what have you been doing recently?
About 1.5 weeks back on Sunday, this was the Sunday before National Day, I performed with the Asian Cultural Symphony Orchestra, ACSO, for a National Day concert. And as musicians, we do have a lot of these freelance gigs that will come in, and that's where your connections are very important. So I got contacted by a senior of mine from the school. And I think being a pianist especially, these projects are actually pretty abundant, especially if it's non-COVID time. Now COVID time, it is a bit more limited of course, but pianists are always in demand in many different areas, just purely because, going back to what we said earlier about the piano is like you've got a full orchestra at your fingertips, right?
It's very versatile.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense logistically to bring a whole orchestra to rehearse for every single time. Let's say if you want to train the singers in a musical theatre, right? There's no point bringing all the instrumentalists to rehearse.
For all rehearsals.
For all rehearsals, yeah. Only the last few, yes.
Or like the main shows, then you have the full orchestra.
Yeah, but before that, just the pianist. Pianists can condense all the parts. Choir rehearsals need pianists as well.
Yeah. So like that's like accompaniment also.
It is accompaniment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
ballet schools will need pianists, right?
Yeah. So,
because playing from a backing track is not so easy. You've got to keep winding back.
And for any of you who have had choir experience, I'm sure you all know that every time at the beginning of a choir session, you will do warm-ups, right? And you will always have the conductor, or if you have an accompanist, playing the like warm-ups for you on the piano, and then you sing along, right? Yeah, so I think like, in terms of music related jobs, you have for pianists at least, because we are both pianists, right? We have things like what he said, performance. But now with COVID, those opportunities unfortunately have dwindled a little bit because with all the restrictions the past year or so. But then accompaniment is one thing. Accompaniment also for like
ABRSM.
ABRSM exam.
Being a musician doesn't just mean being a musician and only good at your instrument now anymore. It used to be that way, you just had to be good at your instrument. Now, it is a lot more of you need to be good at your instrument, you need to be good at managing yourself, you need to be good at marketing yourself, you need to be good at creating your own content, back to creating your own opportunities.
Yeah, and I hope this helps you guys. Sorry, plugging my own show.
But yeah, so all of those, because of the online social media presence and all, right? Once you start to tap on all of those, that's when your name gets out there. You get more possible opportunities.
Yeah.
Whether it's again with orchestras, as a soloist, or even as chamber, you perform with a small group of chamber. For those of you who don't know, is basically small ensemble.
It's like band, right? But it's like, how a lot of like pop, rock music that you hear, they're performed by bands. So basically it's like a classical version of a band.
And the reason why it's called chamber music is because it used to be performed in these small little chambers and
small venues,
venues,
intimate settings, as in like small settings where it's just a small crowd, and I think like people really get to engage.
A lot of the time was at functions, parties.
Yeah, like private parties, between like close friends, families, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in the aristocratic world.
Yeah. There are a lot of opportunities, and of course teaching, right? So for me, I do teaching mainly. Right now, actually that's the only thing I do so far since graduating in May. But yeah, I've also done things like accompaniment before last time. Very blessed that I have been able to get straight into teaching. I didn't have a period whereby like I was like, oh no, I don't have students, oh no, I don't have jobs, whatever. So I'm very blessed in that sense that even though there was COVID and there were things like heightened alert, circuit breaker last year, I could still teach and I could still earn some money. Of course, I did lose money, right? I mean, like it's very expected I think with COVID that source of income, especially if you're a freelancer. But teaching is so stable that, yeah, for sure, some students, right, their parents might opt not to do online classes, especially if they are very, very young, and it's just very difficult to, you know, get the child to pay attention in front of the screen. Yeah, so we would lose some money in those areas, but there were people who would also be okay, and they were completely, you know, very happy to proceed and to continue lessons online. So that also provided me with some source of income. One tip, right, for other aspiring musicians out there is that if you can, right, try to expand your network when you are already studying. So for me, I basically was very blessed to have been able to start teaching since uni, and I taught quite a lot of people actually. And I also have, like, you know, fellow piano teacher friends who would sometimes, and teachers also, in fact, some of my teachers, right, they would pass me referrals, right? So like if they had inquiries that they couldn't take, they would actually ask me to take on those students. Yeah, and then a lot of it is just by word of mouth. In fact, I've actually tried listing on Carousel and things like that, but actually it never ever worked for me. I don't know why, okay?
Word of mouth.
Yeah, but I think like at the end of the day, like word of mouth, it was still the most powerful tool, to be very honest, because word of mouth, right, it means that someone actually trusts you, right? Trusts your work, your craft, and values you, and that's why they feel that you are worth being recommended to someone else.
Yep.
Right? And I think that's why people feel very comfortable, you know, engaging someone who was recommended to them, right? Because they trust that recommendation. So that's why your connections are actually very important, especially as a freelancer. I think not just as a musician lah, like, you know, in other
Definitely.
other forms
Actually,
of,
no matter where you are,
yeah,
network is
yeah.
key.
But I think it's especially important if you're a freelancer because your job and your source of income is really highly dependent, right, on these connections.
Definitely.
Yeah. So for teaching wise, okay, let's get to the juicy part. How much can you earn? Is it actually sustainable? Yes, it is. A ballpark figure of, like, say, a teacher who has had several years of experience, and, you know, with, like, say, someone who has a degree. Okay, not to say that it's a must to get a degree to get successful in life. Okay, I'm just saying, like, in the music world in Singapore. So yeah, like someone who has a degree, who has had some teaching experience, you might see a range of, like, maybe about 80 to, like, about 100 an hour. Yeah, so it really depends again on how each individual teacher prices. But I think if, let's say, if you get someone who's studying still, or like maybe has a diploma, then I mean the range is huge. But so I think generally the figures of, like, say, someone who's still studying in uni, like music degree uni, or like who has gotten a diploma, that kind of thing, it could possibly range between like 40 to 80 an hour. Okay, it's quite a big gap lah, but that's what I've heard lor. Like, I've really heard, like, from both spectrums. And how about, say, performances? Do you have any idea? Okay, sorry to burst your bubble, but to be honest, we are not very sure about how much you can earn from performances. So in case you think that it's, like, super lucrative, like, wow, you go one time rehearsal 2 hours and then you earn like a 3-figure pay, kind of like you earn a few $100s, but it actually is more than just those 2 hours of rehearsal, basically, because you would have had to spend several hours during your week to actually learn the piece, and, you know, a lot of times you might even have to memorize it. Let's say, like, you know, for classical concerts, sometimes, like, you need to play concertos. Concertos are solo works for an instrument and orchestra. And I've heard from my teacher, right, sometimes, like, you're given a week only, or even a few days. So I think, like, it's a lot of hard work, and it's honestly very high stress, high level of stress lah. Yeah, but then again, you also must remember that performances, while they can be abundant pre-COVID, it is not sustainable to just do performance alone in Singapore lah.
Unless you really get very big, like Mata Grej, Vidya, yeah.
But then these are touring artists, you see.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID, they would be touring, like, all year round to various countries. And I mean, if you think about it, you make sacrifices also, though. Like, if you're a touring artist, you have to sacrifice a lot of time spend at home with family and friends, there are pros and cons to.
It's all about what you choose to sacrifice. How
Yeah.
much you choose to sacrifice.
And what are your priorities? Like, I think there's no right or wrong answer, and whatever you choose, right, it's going to be a decision that I would respect. Like, that anyone chooses, right? As long as you have good reason behind it and you know what you're doing, like you know what you're in for, and you are ready to take on that responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, then let's move on to the next like most common form of income for like us freelance musicians, which is accompaniment. Right? Like, what is the range? You've done accompaniment before. I've also done accompaniment before. Again, I think the rates kind of differ between like a graduate, basically someone who has graduated with a music degree, and someone who's still studying music, right?
I think as a student who's still studying, you can be going anywhere from between 50 to 90 an hour ish, maybe. No, 50 to 100 plus an hour, depending also on the difficulty of the piece. And I think about actually accompaniment, there's really a big range. You know, if you are saying I'm accompanying for
grade 1
obviously
versus like a grade 8 or diploma, right?
Yeah, obviously the standard of the difficulty of the accompaniment is not going to be the same.
Yeah, plus because the time taken to practice beforehand, right? Like, it makes a difference. Like, accompaniment again, right? It's not like you just go there and you do your job and you're done after like that 1 hour, you know? It's a lot of behind the scenes prep that you have to do beforehand, right? Accompaniment is essentially a performance also. It's just that you are accompanying someone, you're playing with someone.
Yep, actually,
it might be worse.
I don't like to use the word accompaniment.
Yeah.
Collaborative musician.
Yes. Yeah, so students maybe like what you said, 50 to 100. But I think like it's more common maybe around 50 to 70 lah.
50 to 80 plus lah, I would say.
I guess, okay. Yeah. Again, for me, I was on the lower end of the spectrum when I did it, but I really don't mind lah. I mean, back then when I first started out, right? But I think it's like, so for like people who have graduated, again, it depends on how they price it, but I think the range probably is like 80 to 100 plus. It might be 100 plus just because, you know, accompaniment, you have to learn the pieces beforehand, especially if it's like for higher grades, because it's not gonna be as sight readable, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah. So, but I think after discussing all of these, right, and seeing these rates, is it really sustainable and viable, you think?
Yes.
It is, right?
Yes.
It is. I think maybe a lot of people might think it is really sustainable just because, as a piano teacher, you must earn a lot of money, you know, it must be very lucrative. And to be honest, I'm here to tell you, no. I mean, okay, it really depends again, right? But I think for me, right now, it's not like the amount I earn will make me rich, you know? Maybe also just because I just recently graduated, just 3 months ago, right? But I think it is comfortable enough. And of course, we have to be very like mentally prepared that every month our income will fluctuate, right? Because it depends on the amount of projects we get. Also, if you're teaching like me, even though it's more steady, right? But there are times when if your students are sick, right? Or sometimes, like for me, I have quite a lot of expat students. So holidays, they would return home to their home country, and so you have to expect that like on those months your income will drop because you won't be teaching for like say the whole month, as you won't be teaching that particular student for a whole month, right? Because they are not around, right? Yeah, so there will be fluctuations and you have to be comfortable with that lah. But I think like you also just need to make sure that you basically set a goal for think about like, okay, I want to hopefully get this amount of jobs, right? And then you also like complement it with teaching lah, because teaching is definitely still more stable, right? Yeah, I think one thing about teaching is that like even though the students may go on holidays, but you know that okay, after the holiday they're gonna come back, right? So it's like, okay, I will not have to worry about my finances for like the next year or something, but maybe just the next month. And then you just prioritize lah, like okay, I spend less the next month or that kind of thing. But yeah, it's very viable, it's very I think it's feasible and it is quite sustainable. Before we end, maybe you can give some aspiring musicians some advice, like what would you tell them?
I think, like I said earlier, find why you really love music, and once you find that, hold on to it and convey that in the things you do. It will attract people. If you really love music, if it shows in your performance, in the way that you teach, people will see it. The other thing is to be very patient. It's going to be a very long journey, but you have to be very patient.
And I think you have to remember that it's normal, right, to go through very rough patches, I think, in your journey. Just because, again, right, it's such an unconventional route here in Singapore. But I think over the years, we have seen how the music scene has slowly been developing, and I'm glad that it has made progress. But I mean, at the end of the day, we all still know that it's still quite new here in Singapore. So just accept the fact that it is, I mean, that there will be challenges, and that it's okay, you know, if sometimes you feel so discouraged or down, just learn to pick yourself up. Okay, I think that's the end of today's discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed it and that you have learned a thing or two about being a freelance musician here in Singapore. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe wherever that is, and also turn on the notifications bell because I'll be uploading videos every single week. With that, we'll see you in the next video. I mean, I'll see you in the next video. Maybe Jonah will make another appearance. If you want him to come on, then remember to give it a thumbs up, okay? Okay, oh, and check out his channel. Alright, okay, bye-bye. I'm gonna finish up my chicken wing. Bye. Thank you.